Hi, it's Jeff with Cribl. In this video, we're going to walk through doing a data replay of AWS S3 data with Cribl Stream, Cribl's data processing engine. And we'll use Cribl Search, an alternative way to analyze the data without moving it. We'll be doing this in a Cribl Cloud account, Cribl's as-a-service offering, and the best way to take advantage of the suite of products. You can sign up today for a free 1 TB account with no credit card required. Just visit cribl.cloud. The replay steps also apply to an on-premise or customer-managed installation as well. And this process will also be very similar for other object storage destinations, such as Azure Blob and Google Cloud. Note that Cribl Search is only available in Cribl Cloud. In this video, we'll be performing these steps. First, we'll need to create a collector source in Stream to access our object storage. Next, we'll use the collector to do some replays and send data into our routes. And finally, we'll use Cribl Search to interrogate the data at rest and show how to use Cribl Search to send to Cribl Stream. Other videos will show how to set up the object storage destination or how to use Lake, Cribl's managed data storage service that simplifies this process. A note before we start: if you want more information, make sure to check out our docs. There are general and in-depth setup instructions, as well as some troubleshooting tips. We recommend the replay use case doc shown here. You'll find all sorts of details and tips for doing the replays. Let's get started. This exercise will build off of another we've created about creating a Stream object storage destination to create our replay collector. Setting up the destination isn't required, but many users tend to use both the object storage destinations and replays together. To be clear, when we talk about replay, we mean that we'll be using Cribl Stream to fetch data from our object storage. And like any other data source, we can apply pipelines to transform the data if desired, and then send it to one or more destinations. You might hear this called data rehydration in other spaces. Replays can be done from object storage whether or not Stream put the data there originally. I'm logged into my Cribl Cloud account and am in Stream under my default group. We need to first set up our collector, so we'll go to Data, then Sources. Here at the top we see the tile for the S3 collector, and we'll click it. Click the Add Collector button on the top right. Give it a friendly name for the ID. Since I've already created a destination that points to the bucket, I can use the Auto-Populate box and pick my JWS3 destination to fill in some of the fields, such as the bucket and path. If I didn't have the destination, I'd just fill these in. Under authentication, I'm using AWS Cribl Cloud Workers, so I'll be using AWS roles, so I'll leave this set to auto. In the Assume Role section, I'll need to enable the slider and fill in the ARN and external ID if one is being used. The settings for the destination should work here, so I've copied them over. If you haven't already configured AWS permissions, that will need to be done first. Check out the S3 destination video in our docs for help and examples. There is one more setting on this first page to configure. If our objects are stored in a structure that includes date and times, and any other fields, we can use the path field to help narrow down our results. My objects in this bucket include the year, month, day, and hour for time information, as well as another field called source type. There are other settings we might configure if needed. For now, we'll leave them as is. There is one more thing I'd like to do, and that is tag all replayed events with a special field. Click on Fields on the left and then Add Field. I'm going to add a field called double_replayed, and the value will be a string called true. I'm doing this because I can use this field in case I want Stream to operate on these logs a certain way. For example, when I create a route to send these to a destination, I can use that field as a filter. Using a field with double underscores also treats it as a Cribl internal field, and those are normally not sent to my destination. I am free to tag the event more, of course, but this will work for now. With all that complete, I'll click Save and then do a commit and deploy to make the changes live. After a few moments, the workers will get the new configuration. Let's test out the collector by clicking it and then clicking Run on the bottom left. A window will pop up for our job. At the top, you'll see 3 options to pick from. Preview mode will bring back the results based on the preview settings at the bottom of the panel. Discovery mode will return the list of files that would be in scope for collection. And full run would be, as the name suggests, a full collection run that would get all of our matching events and send them to our routes. For now, we'll do a preview capturing 100 events just to check that all the plumbing works. I'll leave all the options blank to test it, and then we'll click Run on the bottom right. If all goes well, we should see events appear. If not, we may need to double check the settings and permissions. This is looking good, though I am noticing that the raw field is there twice. We can fix that by changing the event breaker settings on the collector. I'm going to close this window and do one more test. I notice that these events have a field called source type with a value called firewall. I'd like to test the filtering to see what happens. I'll click the run box again, and then for the filter, I'll type in an expression that looks for any events that are not firewall events. Clicking run again, we see that we get some other results. These are for access logs that are also in the bucket. So the filter does appear to be working. You could use this filter in the time controls to selectively replay events. The last part to try is to actually send the events to Stream's routes, which would operate on the events like any other source in Stream. I'm in the routes interface. I've created a route that looks for any events that are tagged as replayed, and in this case are also firewall events. I've picked my firewall pipeline to do some optimization and formatting, and for this test, I'm just sending them to the dev null graveyard. This could instead be our system of analysis or another destination. I'll go back to my collector source, and this time I'm going to do a full run. I'll pick the absolute button on the time range, and I'll input a date range to get the events on the 6th of September. And I'll edit my filter to get only the firewall events. I'll click Run in the bottom. Unlike the preview mode, we don't see any results in the UI. Instead, we can go to the monitoring console by closing the window and clicking Monitoring on the left-hand side. Navigate to System and Jobs Inspector, and then use the right side drop-down to choose the right worker group. Here you can see a list of all the non-preview jobs. I'll click the one I just ran and can see the stats or check for any issues. It looks like we have a number of events collected and filtered. Excellent! The last part to check is that we see the event show up in our routes page. I'll navigate back to it and note that on the replayed route, we see the spark line is ticked up. This means Stream should have processed the data, and if we were to check the destination, it would be there. Now that we've completed a replay scenario, what if we wanted to search the data in place without having to move it? Cribl Search allows us to do exactly that, and it even provides an operator called send that lets us send the results back to Stream. Let's give it a try. I've navigated to Cribl Search in my cloud account. The first thing we have to do is set up permissions to allow Cribl Search to access the data. We'll click on Data on the left-hand side. There are two main concepts we need to know for the data organization in Search. The first is the dataset provider. Think of it as who is providing access to the data, such as an AWS S3 in this example, or other storage or an API provider. It's where we'll set up our authentication and credentials. The dataset is the actual data. In our example, our actual S3 bucket is the dataset. We'll need to set up the provider first. In the Dataset Providers tab, we'll click Add Provider on the right. We can enter a friendly ID and then select Amazon S3 from the dropdown. Like in the replay scenario, we need to set up role or key authentication. Note that on the right-hand side, Cribl gives us a sample trust and permissions policy we can use to set up the AWS role credentials. Check out the S3 destination video for detailed steps on how to go about doing this. I've already set this up, so I have my ARN that I need to give Cribl access. And if using one, we input the external ID. Click Save on the bottom to save the changes. Now that our access is set up, we set up the dataset by clicking on Datasets. Click Add Dataset on the right. Give it a friendly name, then choose the provider we just set up a moment ago. For the bucket path, we need to tell Search how the data is organized. I'll paste in the structure of my S3 data. You would edit this to match yours. Because Stream put the data there, I'll click on the processing item on the left. I need to add in a rule that tells Search how my events are organized in the files. I'll click Add, then choose the Cribl Search raw data item and drag it as the first option. For now, I'll click Save and test it out. On the line of my dataset, I'll click the Search button and get the query UI. My events might be a bit old, so if I don't see anything, I could try flipping the time selector to all time and then clicking Search again. And we are quickly seeing our results. Note that we didn't move the data ourselves. Search has gone out and fetched it. With the access set up, Search has interrogated our S3 bucket and brought back relevant results. From here, we can use the query language, which is based on Kusto, to run searches as we are probably used to in other tools. I'll just run a quick search that will group my results by what source type they have. Click on source type in the field list and choose Summarize by Values and update this query. Running the query again, we should get a chart and table. For our last example, let's say that we were looking for some events that we needed to send back to our analytics tools. Maybe we're doing an investigation to an incident or performance issue, or maybe we need to demonstrate something for our compliance posture. In any case, we want to send these results back to Stream for processing. To do this, we'll need to use the Cribl stream source called Cribl HTTP. I already have a route set up for this in my default worker group. To send the data over, we'll add a pipe in the send command to our query. Search shows us the transaction result in the window. If we look at Stream, we should see the sparkline increment for this route and data. And we can also do a capture to see it in real time. I'll select the capture option for the route, flip over to Search, and do another send operation. If all goes well, we'll see the results in Stream just like we do for our other data sources. We can now apply any pipelines and optimizations we like and send this data to any destination we need to. Again, all this is without us having to move the data or set up any collectors. And that's it for this exercise. In just a few minutes, we've done the following. Set up a stream collector for our S3 data, performed replay jobs to get data back, and finally, we use Cribl Search to analyze our data where it lives and send it back to Stream. If you want to know more, check out our docs at docs.cribl.io. You might want to try out our free sandboxes at sandbox.cribl.io. and join us at community.cribl.io to be part of the goat herd. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.